Long ago, at the dawn of time, the first seed of human civilization was planted. It was planted next to the fertile soil surrounding a mystic river in the center of a blessed land. This midland between the four corners of the globe was Egypt. I was called Kemet, which meant the fertile land that surrounded the world's longest river, the Nile. The central location in the world was reflected on my people's looks, attitudes, and traditions, as they were a middle ground between all extremes. Tourists from all around the world celebrate the amazing wonder of the alignment of the sun on King Ramses' II face in his temple, a phenomenon that occurs twice a year, on February, marking his assumption to the throne, and the second on October, marking his birthday. The great wonder of the world, the Giza eight-sided pyramid, built with extreme precision, stood as the tallest building on Earth for more than 5,000 years.
The world recently found the extreme wonder that the ancient Egyptians aligned to the millimeter the Sphinx and the Giza pyramids, with the major constellations thus creating a universal dial.
The golden mean ratio first used by the Egyptians was used by all major builders and artists to give us marvels and masterpieces of Sandro Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Salvador Dali.
This golden ratio was also used in music, for example, in Ludwig van Beethoven's Symphony No. 5.
The people of Egypt believed that after death, the soul returns back to the body. So they preserved the dead body of the pharaoh by applying chemicals in it. This preserved body of the pharaoh was known as a mummy. It was covered with cloth and kept inside a coffin. That coffin was again kept inside a stone box named a sarcophagus, which contained small holes. The Egyptians believed that the soul can again enter into that body through these holes. 1,500 years before the 10 Commandments given to Moses was the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead that was written on the sheets of papyrus, on the walls of tombs and coffins. The teachings in this book were to help the dead pass through the dangers of the underworld and attain an afterlife of bliss in the field of peace. The various texts were composed over thousands of years and total nearly 200.
Pharaoh Akhenaten, the father of the famous Tutankhamun, brought a revolutionary change in the field of religion. He introduced monotheism in Egypt and to the world. He proclaimed that there was only one God, and he is Aten, or Sun God.
10 Commandments given to Moses on Mount Sinai in Egypt were the pillars of the faith of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Moses grew up and received all of his education in the house of the Pharaoh.
Egypt was the first civilization to fully recognize the role of women and grant them full rights to the extent that they were able to rule. Queens Hatshepsut, Nefertiti, Nefertari, and Cleopatra are just a few examples.
Although years passed, yet the enlightening role of Egypt never stopped. And as the light of civilization came from the south and central pharaonic Egypt, later on the light came from the marvelous city of Alexandria in the northern Mediterranean coast of Ptolemaic Egypt. The city of Alexandria hosted the first ever universal library with a world view. The Alexandria Library was the Mecca for great musicians, poets, philosophers, artists, and scientists from all over the world.
Old scholars in this library, such as Archimedes, the father of engineering, and Aristarchus of Samos, who proposed the first heliocentric system of the universe.
Not only them, there were also Euclid, the father of geometry, Herophilus, the founder of the scientific method, Hipparchus, the founder of the trigonometry, and Hero, the father of mechanics.
As mental light shined from the Library of Alexandria to guide human minds, torch light shined from Pharos, the lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. For many centuries, it was one of the tallest man-made structures in the world. Saint Mark of Alexandria was a great saint and martyr who led the mystic school of tolerance and divine unconditional love for all. This pioneer saint set an example for many other great martyrs. As Egypt Alexandria was a beacon for intellectual light, the St. Mark Cathedral shed its spiritual light on the 4 corners of the globe.
Annianus the Cobbler was the first person that St. Mark won to Christianity after his arrival in Alexandria.
Having shown himself a believer in monotheism, Annianus invited Mark to his home where he taught Annianus's family the gospel and baptized all of them, and then quickly converted a large number of the local people.
Once more, Alexandria had a major enlightening role, but this time on the spiritual side. St. Mark founded the School of Alexandria and established it for the teaching of Christianity as the only means of giving it a firm foundation in the city. The school became well known. It was the oldest center for sacred sciences in the history of Christianity. Many prominent bishops from different parts of the world were instructed there, and it introduced into the world many scholars and saints. Today, libraries, museums, and universities throughout the whole world possess hundreds and thousands of Coptic manuscripts. The monastery of St. Anthony is a Coptic Orthodox monastery standing in an oasis in the eastern desert of Egypt, is the oldest monastery in the world.
The Arab Muslim general Amr ibn al-As came to Egypt in 639 and eventually arrived in Alexandria in 642.
Before the arrival of Amr, the Byzantine rulers denied for 13 years all clerical rights of Pope Benjamin I, the 38th Pope of Alexandria and Patriarch of the See of St. Mark. Upon his arrival, Amr asked to meet with Pope Benjamin.
I have never seen such an impressive man of God as you, Pope Benjamin.
You are a wise and just man.
From this day on, all the rights that you had been denied by the Byzantines will be restored, and you will be the sole representative of the Egyptian people.
Thank you very much for restoring proper order and giving back the just rights of the Coptic Egyptians. I also thank you for preserving the papal seat of Alexandria and the See of St. Mark, that spiritually enlightened the world for centuries.
Furthermore, you and all other Christians will have back all the churches that were confiscated by the Byzantines. I will also help you renovate any other old or destroyed churches.
Between the 9th and 12th centuries, intellectual life in Egypt during the Fatimid period achieved great progress and activity, due to many scholars who lived in or came to Egypt, as well as the number of books available. Fatimid caliphs gave prominent positions to scholars in their courts, encouraged students, and established libraries in their palaces so that scholars might expand their knowledge and reap benefits from the work of their predecessors. Tolerance was extended to non-Muslims, such as Christians and Jews, who occupied high levels in government based on ability and on merit. The Al-Azhar University was founded in 970 by the Fatimids as a center of Islamic learning. Its students studied the Quran and Islamic law in detail, along with logic, grammar, rhetoric, and how to calculate the phases of the moon. It was one of the first universities in the world, and the only one in the Arabic world to survive as a modern university, including secular subjects in the curriculum. Today, it is the chief center of Arabic literature and Islamic learning in the world.
One of the students of Al-Azhar University was Ibn Yunus al-Misri, who was an important Egyptian Muslim, astronomer, and mathematician, whose works are noted for being ahead of their time, having been based on meticulous calculations and attention to detail. The crater Ibn Yunus on the moon is named after him.
Two other prominent students of Al-Azhar University were Muhammad Abdu, the key founding figure of Islamic modernism, and Taha Hussein, the visually impaired genius with the 2 PhD degrees from the 2 top universities in Egypt and France. He was also the figurehead for Middle Eastern Renaissance. He was the modernist movement leader in the Middle East and North Africa and was nominated 14 times for the Nobel Prize in Literature.
In the modern era, Egypt continued to play its leading and pioneering role of enlightenment during the 19th and 20th century.
This period witnessed Rifa el-Tahtawi, who was the leading Middle Eastern scholar to attempt to bring about reconciliation and an understanding between Islamic and Christian civilizations. He founded the School of Languages in 1835 and was the leader of the development of science, law, literature, and Egyptology in the 19th century Egypt and Middle East.
Egypt is the most productive country in the Middle East in the field of television, film production, and songs. It also has the most developed media system in the region since 1896. Egypt was the first country in the Middle East to have an opera house and group in 1869. The 1940s, 50s, and the 1960s are generally considered the golden age of Egyptian cinema. In the 1950s, Egypt's cinema industry was the world's third largest. Egypt was always a land that hosted people from the four corners of the globe and showed them extreme hospitality. Some of the world's renowned artists who grew up as Egyptians and then shined as stars all over the world were Dalida and Demis Roussos.
Person like a man who'll take you far away, so very, very far away. He will come someday to another land. He'll take you far away, so very, very far away. He'll soon come, please say. Nobody knows who will share all your love, pure and fair. But in your eyes I can see that someone will be me.
Other native Egyptians were easily able to become internationally renowned artists like the superstars Omar Sharif, Rami Malek, and Mina Masood.
Egypt always played the leading role in both Africa and the Arab world, with the biggest number of Nobel and international prize winners in the fields of literature, peace, and science.
Just as it leads Africa and the Arab world in arts and sciences, Egypt is also the leader in sports, especially in the game of soccer, as the Egyptian team holds the undefeated records of winning 7 African Cup of Nations tournaments. Egypt is also the land of the Premier League top player and scorer and international superstar, Mohamed Salah.
Also, Egypt is a founder of the Non-Alignment Movement, the African Union, and founder and host of the headquarters of the Arab League, with almost all of its secretary generals from Egypt. Also, Boutros Ghali served as the Secretary General of the United Nations. And now, just like in the past, Egypt is still a beacon for moderation and cooperation between different faiths. It is also a world leader fighting in the front lines against terrorism induced by intolerance.
Egypt witnessed the opening of the Cathedral of the Nativity in Egypt's new administrative capital, which is the biggest cathedral in the Middle East.
I welcome you all to visit my ancient and medieval wonders of art and architecture, my religious and sacred sites, my white, warm, sandy beaches, and my diving paradises, along with my modern, hospitable cities. Welcome to Egypt, the Midland of the world.